Well, hello, I'm Chief Laurent McDonald of the Oxford Fire and Emergency Services, and today we're proud to have Kaylee Olson of Oxford Cable Access here to go over and demonstrate with some members of the department the new rescue pumper that we purchased recently after being approved in last year's town meeting. This vehicle, which we have called and designated Squad 1, replaced Rescue 1 and Engine 1, two older vehicles, and combined the capabilities and services of both those vehicles into one, which gives us some flexibility. It's called a squad because it serves multiple functions. It is a fire suppression apparatus, and it is also a medium to heavy rescue capable vehicle. This means it can go out on major industrial accidents, car accidents, things of that nature. To be able to perform that role, it carries water, foam, and associated hoses, so it can also perform the duties of a fire suppression apparatus. We went this route because we had the two vehicles that were coming up in our capital plan to be replaced, and the cost to replace both those vehicles would have been in the range of about $1.2 to $1.3 million. What this did is give us the capability to combine the two purposes of a vehicle into one with our much smaller crew that we have. We have at any time during the day, 2 firefighters on duty at Station 1 and 2 firefighters on duty at Station 2. So therefore, it's hard to staff 2 different vehicles at a time. This gives us the capability to bring rescue and suppression capabilities to any incident that we may face. So it served many purposes, and we did that all for the sum of $685,000. That's including the price of the vehicle, approximately $599,000, and then the rest for upgrading the tools and equipment. This particular one, the crew will go over. I have Lieutenant Nick Lambert, who is the officer on duty today, and firefighter EMT Jeffrey Morris, who served on the committee, and Deputy Chief Belanja, who are going to demonstrate and discuss for you the tools and capabilities that this vehicle has to protect the public. So we are thankful to the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, our town manager, and the citizens of Oxford for putting your investment in us, and we appreciate all you do to support us and our important mission. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Nicholas Lambert. I'm the duty officer for Group 3, and this is Jeff Morris. He's one of our firefighter EMTs as well, and he was one of the members of the truck committee that helped design this truck for the town of Oxford. So we're going to go over some of the equipment on the truck today and what it's used for and why we have it. So the first thing we're going to go over is our SCBA, which is a self-contained breathing apparatus. This truck is capable of holding 6 firefighters and 5 SCBAs. So what the SCBAs are for providing us air for breathing in any sort of fire environment or any other hazardous atmosphere where we may go into. So each one of these SCBAs provides us with about 20 to 30 minutes worth of air, depending on how hard you are working. These were recently purchased. We got these SCBA approximately 1 year ago to replace our older ones. SCBAs have a 15-year lifespan, and our old ones were at the end of their lifespan, so we were able to replace them with these new ones that are up to date with current NFPA standard. Other things that we have in the cab, we have a 4-gas multi-gas meter. This is a meter we use for detecting different atmospheres that we may be working in. This one detects 5 different gases. The first gas that it detects is oxygen, to make sure that our oxygen level in the atmosphere is safe. It's not too low and it's not too high. The next gas that we always check for is our flammable gases. So this will tell us if there's any flammable gas in the atmosphere, any propane, any natural gas, any pentane, any methane. This will be able to detect those gases and tell us if it's safe or not to be in that atmosphere. The next 3 gases it checks are all different toxic gases that are poisonous to us. The first gas that you may be familiar with, that you hear the most often about, is probably carbon monoxide. If you guys have a carbon monoxide alarm go off in your house, we can come take this meter and go through the entire house and check where that carbon monoxide is coming from, as well as be able to read the levels inside the house. The next gas that I can check is hydrogen sulfide. hydrogen sulfide is a gas that smells like rotten eggs that is toxic to humans, and it comes from decomposing organic material. So in the bottom of a storm drain or any place like that where leaves and other debris can build up, that breakdown of that material can cause a release of hydrogen sulfide, and we can check for that gas as well. The fifth gas that this reads for, and the last flammable gas, is hydrogen cyanide. Hydrogen cyanide is a poisonous gas that is released by the burning of plastic materials. So if we're going into a house fire, that burning plastic in that house may be releasing hydrogen cyanide gas, and we can check for that with this meter. The next piece of equipment that we have in the cab is our thermal imager. This allows us to do two different things. One, when I'm going into a burning building and I'm trying to find the seat of the fire or where that fire is coming from, or if there's any sort of heat source or fire inside the walls, this will be able to see whether or not there's any excess heat coming from any area, so it helps us locate the location of any fire. The other thing we can use this for is in search and rescue operations. We may be looking for a victim in a superheated atmosphere. That victim's body will be cooler than the atmosphere around it, and we may be able to find that body using our thermal imager. Moving on, our truck here, has several hoses pre-piped into it. So I show up on a fire scene, there's a fire going on, I can have one of my firefighters or myself can just grab one of these hoses, pull it out, and go straight to the fire, and it's already hooked into the truck itself. We have 2 3/4 inch lines here. They go off either side of the truck, and I have a 2.5 inch line here. So this is our typical line for most house fires. If the fire is larger, we can actually pull the bigger line and put more gallons per minute on that fire to put it out. Moving over here. As I said, this truck is capable of fire suppression. This here is our pump panel. This is where we're going to control how many gallons per minute we put out on a hose, as well as the pressure in that hose that we're putting out for water. This pump is capable of 1,500 gallons a minute at its max. The truck also carries 1,000 gallons of water with it. This truck also has a pre-piped foam system in it as well. You may have seen on the news all the stuff about the PFAS and all those different chemicals that are in firefighting foam. I will report that we use a foam that contains none of those. And this foam is used for putting out any sort of gasoline fire or flammable liquid fire. So moving on, this compartment here, we have several different fittings for hooking the hoses up, going mutual aid or hooking different size lines together. Moving on to our next compartment here. This compartment contains our hand tools for fire suppression, some hooks for pulling down sheetrock, some bolt cutters for cutting any locks we have to get past, and behind this we have a few more tools. We have our standard firefighter axe, we have sledgehammers, pry bars, picket axe, and more tools for pulling down any sheetrock to get to fire that's embedded inside walls. So what we have in this compartment here is some of our rescue equipment. What we have here is our Paratech strut system. And what our Paratech struts are for is for stabilizing cars during accidents. So we may have a car that's rolled over onto its side or a car that's rolled over onto its roof. We want to make that car stable so it's not going to roll further and possibly land on one of our victims or land on one of our rescuers, as well as keep the victim as stable as possible inside that vehicle as we cut them out. The other thing that may happen is we may have to cut part of that vehicle apart, and we're going to reduce the structural stability of that vehicle. So now by putting these struts in place, we're going to support that vehicle so it's not going to move. The struts will expand out, they'll bite into the vehicle, or we can use a chain to basket the vehicle and hold that vehicle in place. Moving on to some other equipment that we have in here. We have a ventilation fan. This fan is designed to blow air into a house using something called positive pressure ventilation. That positive pressure ventilation will push any toxic gases or smoke out of the residence and into the atmosphere outside, that way making the residence safe for the owners to return to it. We have 3 types of saws in this compartment as well. My first saw is just a standard chainsaw with a 20-inch bar. This is good for cutting down any tree limbs or any sort of trees that fall on the roadway, so we can make access. Our next saw here looks like a chainsaw, but this is not a chainsaw. This is what's called a ventilation saw. The difference is this has a specialized chain on it and a bigger motor, and it's designed for cutting through roofs and asphalt shingles and any nails or anything else that we may encounter while trying to ventilate a roof or cut through a structure. Our third type of saw right here, this is what we call a K12. It has a 12-inch rotary blade. The blade on this saw is capable of cutting through concrete. It's capable of cutting through wood as well as cutting through metal. So now we're going to continue on the officer's side of the vehicle, or the passenger side. The first thing we're going to go over is down here we have what we call our chimney bucket, and this is what we use for chimney fires. This has a couple different special tools in it. The first one is a mirror. This may look like just a piece of junk, but this helps us immensely when fighting chimney fires. This allows us to look up the chimney from the bottom, or if we're on top on the roof, I can use this to look down the chimney as well without having to put my head or face over that hot gases coming out of the chimney. One of the things we also have is some high heat gloves. So one of our tactics that we may use on the roof is we may lower a weight down, which Jeff has right here. This weight will get lowered down from the top of the chimney, and it will break up any clogs within that chimney. This chain can get extremely hot during this operation, so we need special high heat gloves in order to pull this weight back up and out of the chimney after we break that clog up. Some other things that we have on the side is some rescue equipment. And what we have here is we have our high pressure airbags. These high pressure airbags use compressed air. We can place these underneath an item, and we can then use that compressed air to expand the bag up to lift it up. This bag, and they're extremely strong. This bag, for example, is capable of lifting up to 19 tons. Over here, I have the controlling systems for those airbags. We have a acetylene torch if we have to cut through any metal. So another item that we have here is we have down here a hopper that goes up to the roof where we have 70 pounds of Speedy Dry loaded. That Speedy Dry is a clay-based material that we can use for controlling any hydrocarbon, which are oil or gasoline spills, where they'll absorb up that spill and prevent that spill from spreading. Moving on to our next compartment here, we have several other tools. We have a toolbox, we have a tool bag, we have some buckets for carrying that Speedy Dry around. All right. Our next compartment here is the compartment we'll use for many car accidents and crashes. This compartment here contains what we call the jaws of life, or are referred to as jaws of life. And we have 2 main jaws set up here. The first one is a battery-powered set of cutters. These cutters are capable of cutting through hardened steel, so they are upgrade over our old cutters, so we can cut through any piece of the vehicle to help move it away from the victim to extricate the victim out. The other nice thing about these tools that got upgraded with the vehicle is they're all battery powered. Our old tools used to have a power pack or have to have hydraulic lines attached to them, so when we were trying to move around and extricate that victim out of the accident, we would have to deal with these lines. Now we don't have to deal with the issues of the length of the lines or the lines getting tangled on something while we're moving around the vehicle. We can just move the tool right to that spot. So the next tool we're going to go over is we have a pair of what we refer to as the spreaders for the jaws of life. The spreaders do 2 functions. The first one, as implied, is they can spread out in 2 different directions. That way we can push pieces of the vehicle away from the victim. The other thing they can do is they can compress and crush. So we'll show how they expand out. So that'll expand out and that'll push material away from the victim, or we can pull them together and pinch or crush material if that's going to allow us to be able to move it away from the victim. The third tool that we have is what we call a hydraulic ram. The hydraulic ram extends out in 2 different directions, and this allows us to push or move pieces of the vehicle away from the victim. Where we commonly use this is when the dashboard is pressed down and we want to lift the dashboard and move it up and off the victim. So Jeff is now going to demonstrate how that expands out. While the expansion may seem slow, when we have a human being trapped in a vehicle, we want to move methodically. We don't want to move fast. We want to make sure we're moving where we're not going to cause further harm or injury to that victim who is trapped. Some other stuff that we have in this compartment is we've switched over to all battery-powered tools for on scene. This helps us also get away from being tangled up in extension cords or having to take the time to set up extension cords during an emergency operation. One of the things that often happens on a fire is we cut power to the building. The purpose of cutting power to that building is to prevent us from getting electrocuted while we're in fire suppression. So what we do is we set up lighting. Now with battery powered lights, we can quickly set up lights without having to trip over cords. Some other things we have in this compartment is we have a set of ratchet straps and we have chains, and these are for binding or holding onto stuff or pulling stuff. We use these most often in vehicle extrication. This wood here, these are crib chocks, and what they are used for is also stabilizing a vehicle. So what we would do is we would put that underneath the frame of the vehicle. The frame would rest on whichever step it's closest to, and that helps prevent the vehicle from rocking back and forth while we're moving the victim, taking the suspension out of play. All right, so welcome to the roof of the truck. We have additional storage on the roof as well. What I'm standing in here is our hose bed with 1,000 feet of LDH, which is large diameter hose. We use 4-inch hose, and this allows us to put a temporary water main down the street to get to the fire, so we can supply up to 1,000 gallons a minute to that fire using this LDH up here. Another thing that we have in here is we have this compartment here that has some additional strut equipment in it. And what we have is a new addition to our arsenal of rescue equipment called Hydrofusion struts. These ones are on loan from the manufacturer while we're waiting for ours to get delivered, but this strut is capable of lifting 20,000 pounds, and we have 2 of them. So again, we can use these to lift up and move up a tractor trailer or another large heavy piece of equipment, because each one of these is good for 20,000 pounds, safe lifting. Moving to my right over here, this compartment here contains our hopper with the Speedy Dry for hydrocarbon spills, as well as what we call diapers, which are these square absorbent mats that again we use for hydrocarbon spills, and what we call snakes, which are long tubes of material that's designed to absorb that oil or gas spill. If the spill is ongoing, I can move over to this next compartment right here. And in this next compartment, I have different types of tubs that I can use to help capture that spill and prevent that spill from spreading further. Moving to the left here, this compartment here has some of our water rescue equipment. So if we have anyone stuck inside the water or fall through the ice, we have specialized equipment here for getting them out. Some of the stuff we have is life jackets, as well as cold water rescue suits. And those suits allow us to go into the water even when the water is below freezing in temperature.
So again, we'd just like to thank the town manager, the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and of course, the townspeople for your support. My name is Deputy Chief John Belanger. This is
Deputy Chief Ken Sellers.
And we'd also like to thank the truck committee, who has designed and overseen the build out of all the compartments and the purchase of the tools. The committee was comprised of Chairman Firefighter Kevin Holstrom, was also comprised of Lieutenant Michael Hudon, Firefighter Jeffrey Morris, Firefighter Tyler Desatel, Firefighter Sean O'Neill, and it was overseen by myself and Deputy Sellers. Again, thank you. We are always open. If anybody would like to come down and check out the truck and have a one-on-one tour, we'd be happy to provide that. And thank you again. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.